All right, Jacob. Pro Bowl team was announced for our Detroit Lions. We are well represented this year. This is first time I've seen so many Lions names ever listed on a Pro Bowl sheet. So you want to go through
Exactly.
it through our I know it's great, right?
Usually it's like,
It's a
did
great
we
place to
make
be
it?
at.
Did somebody make it? Like, please let
I know.
somebody be on there. And now
I
we're
know.
flooded with selections.
Yeah, they don't have the same rule in the NFL where every team gets represented like they do in baseball. In baseball all-star games, everyone has to be represented. For a long time, the Lions wouldn't have a representative, or we get Jack Fox in there. We get our punter.
Yeah.
That was our that's where we could hang our hat. Jason Hanson for a while, maybe. Um, you want me to list the starters, or you want to go ahead and do that?
You can go ahead and list the starters. I'll go over the reserves.
All right, cool. So starters, Jared Goff, well deserved fourth selection for the Pro Bowl, so that's awesome. Amon Ra St. Brown, he's going to make it. Although he didn't make it last year, the initial vote, right? He gets in the All Pro, but doesn't get a Pro Bowl. They made sure to not make the same mistake this time. Our boy Frank Ragnow, he's in. Penei Sewell, he was going to make it, and then the player I mentioned before, Jack Fox. He plays about half the games for the Lions because we don't have to punt, but when we do need him, he comes up huge. Who made it for the reserves, Jacob?
The reserves. So Jahmyr Gibbs, obviously very deserving. Top running back in the league right now for sure. He's put up there. I don't know if you saw, they posted a statistic earlier. I think it was Justin Rogers. We envision Jahmyr Gibbs kind of being like an Alvin Kamara type back. And, it's a second season, and he's already, I think it's the scrimmage yards, right? He's already surpassed the scrimmage yards from Alvin Kamara.
Yeah, Alvin Kamara's ever done. So
Right.
I know last year when when Jahmyr was a rookie, we were hoping that Alvin Kamara thing would come to fruition, and he's more than done that. And what's crazy is that splitting time for the most part when Dave Montgomery isn't hurt, he's splitting time. He's not on the field all the time, which is even more impressive that he's able to put up those stats.
Exactly. He doesn't have as many touches as some of these other running backs, and he's still able to do, a really good job. Other reserve, first time safety Brian Branch, also very deserving, very hardworking player, constantly just a huge part of our defense.
Yeah, finally getting the recognition. Tom Grassi will be all mad that he's Packers missed on Branch, and we capitalized on letting him fall to us. So I love having Branch out there. We also had, along with those 7 players, which is the second most in the league, the Ravens had 9 players elected, the Lions had 7, but we also had 11 players named as alternates for the Pro Bowl, which, again, insane.
I know we mentioned on the pod, but if you didn't hear that, but most of these guys were, top 3 or top 5 in the fan vote. And that was announced just a couple days before they had the actual official final voting results. So I believe the fan vote was supposed to count for a third, right? They
Yeah,
split into
third, and
3
then
and
the
they all held
players, and
equal
then the
weight.
coach. Um, is it
That's
weird
the
that they
part.
do this before the last game of the season?
Yes, that's what I was
Like,
just gonna say. Is I don't understand, and for the fan vote to end, and then right after that, the player and coaches vote. Like, who voted on this? When did they vote on this? Did they vote on this months ago?
yeah.
Because a lot changes towards the end of the year. Can you imagine voting on MVP like in the middle of the season?
Well, I mean, Kerby Joseph, who we're going to talk about in a little bit, got 2 interceptions on Monday. When did this vote go down? He leads the league in interception. I don't get it, man. So let's all those questions are I guess for another podcast, but yeah, it floors me a little bit that we don't let the whole season play out. Let's talk about this. Kerby Joseph, the league leader in interceptions with 9. It's not even the first alternative, the second alternative. Why do you think he got left off? We'll start there.
Okay, I mean, I think the main reason that he was left off is just this perception that people have of him that he's a dirty player. It really makes me. There's two things that could have happened. We kind of just mentioned the one. Either the voting between the coaches and the players happened a week, a couple weeks or a month ago or something, like way in advance before that, multi interception game. Because before that, he kind of was neck and neck with McKinney as far as the stats and everything went. They had the same number of interceptions. It's kind of give or take. Maybe, the coaches and players are voting. They're like, hey, there's a lot of Lions in here. Packers need represented. We'll put McKinney in here. Who knows if that's how that conversation went? But the other thing is just the perception that he is a dirty player. And, when you see that, that's all the Twitter rage and everything that's going on right now. That's really the only thing the only argument that I see being made against him is just that he's a dirty player. Right? I mean, that's, you put any stat line that you can think of out there, and he absolutely deserves a Pro Bowl nod, and he really should be in the Defensive Player of the Year running. I feel like he is. I know he's not, being a public name. He's not one of the betting names right now, but, the stats speak for themselves. And nobody can defend Xavier McKinney starting over him without mentioning the perception that he's a dirty player. And he has one penalty this year for unnecessary roughness.
Yeah, and that was just this past week for protecting Terrion Arnold. It was after the play, and it wasn't a dirty hit or anything. He just come over and shoved him, and yeah. So, yeah, I get with that. When you look at he doesn't hit people in the helmets. I know the thought is that he's a dirty player because 2 players went out with these injuries. Those things happen, like low hits happen all the time. You don't want to hit people high because you don't want to give them a concussion. And so you hit them low. And Kerby's not the biggest guy. The 2 players that he did cause knee injuries to were big tight ends, huge tight ends. He's not going to come in and hit them. He's got to hit them low to get them down. It just happened that that a knee injury happened. But I think that's more of a coincidence that those cause knee injuries and not something that he's trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, even when he returned the interception, he got hit low and he got flipped up too. That's a football play. I mean, that's how a tackle works. And it's harder for the receiver maybe to get ready for it when they're catching and turning around, but at the same time, you can't get ran over, and that's kind of what the NFL wants. You don't want to go low, you want to go for their hips or below. You want to drop down. It kind of was just the perfect storm, and it's just really unfortunate that it happened twice. But there was no way, even if Kerby thought, like, I'm going to take this guy's knee out, it's not that easy to just lay a perfect hit with your helmet on somebody's knee. That's not what he was going for.
I think another thing that couples in there is just what Stafford was mic'd up and basically called out Kerby after he hit the tight end for the Rams, and they basically said, "I've seen you on tape. You're a dirty player." And I think the general public ran with that, and then it's all the rage on social media, which is unfortunate because Kerby's having an amazing year. He deserves this recognition. So let's talk about it. What stats you got to back up your claim that Kerby should be taking over Xavier McKinney?
I got all the stats. So these are all provided from Pro Football Focus. Some of them are ratings, but some of these are actual statistics as well. Xavier McKinney was voted the starter for the Pro Bowl. The first alternate was the Atlanta Falcons' Jessie Bates, and then you have Kerby Joseph, who was the second alternate. So just right from the jump, their Pro Football Focus grade, Kerby leads with a 90.7. Xavier's 87.1. Jessie Bates is 81.3. Rush defense, actually, Xavier McKinney is last of these three with a 69.4. Jesse's 84.9, Kerby's 82.6. And then the coverage grade, Kerby's 91.5, Xavier 90.4, Jesse 80.8. So of the Pro Football Focus ratings, which I know those you can kind of give and take or whatever, I mean, Kerby leads in 2 of them and he's second in 1. Mm-hmm. So, like I said, Pro Football Focus, give or take, whatever. But I mean, if we're going to break down, here's the stats, okay? Missed tackles, Jessie Bates has 14 missed tackles. Xavier and Kerby both have 5 apiece. Catches allowed, Kerby's allowed 16 catches. Xavier 23, Jesse 27. Interceptions, we already know that, but Jesse's got 6, Xavier's got 7, Kerby's got 9. You want to talk about touchdowns? You like the defensive scores? Xavier is the only one of those 3 to not score a touchdown. Mm-hmm. Jesse took one back. Kerby took one back in a huge way against the Packers. And then the other argument that I saw somebody make is like, well, you have to take team performance in consideration. We're the 1 seed. We're fighting for the 1 seed. That makes no sense either, especially for Jessie Bates to be put in above him as the alternate. By and large, it's a popularity contest. And I don't know about you, I'm less concerned about this Pro Bowl. I am concerned, as we were for Amon Ra last year, what this means for his All-Pro status. Because he deserves that first-team All-Pro. And
Yeah.
I hope that this doesn't deter in any way, or this conversation doesn't, lead in some sort of way where he doesn't get that.
Yeah, I agree. Some of the stats that I think also are pretty eye popping are, we talked about this on the pod, I think with Morgan this last week. He leads the league with 9 interceptions, but the QB passer rating against him is 25.4, which is the lowest in the league and also the sixth lowest since they've been keeping the stat in 2016. So this is all time level of production that we're getting from Kerby. I mentioned his 25.4 passer rating. If you look at Xavier McKinney, he's at 57.9. So you could double Kerby's passer rating against it. He'd still be lower than Xavier McKinney. Kerby's only allowed 133 yards passing, whereas Xavier McKinney's up to 261 yards. I will say the advantage that Xavier McKinney has is that he does have a sack and he has 4 QB pressures. Generally, the Lions do not send Joseph on that, whether that's a scheme thing or I don't know if Kirby's that effective in that area. So Xavier McKinney does have that, but even that, it's 1 sack. Both of them are playing pretty far from the line of scrimmage, so it's hard for them to get a tackle for loss. But yeah, they Kirby's got him almost on all levels. And I think you're right. It's all down to a perception thing, which is really unfortunate for Kerby. Now, some of these things I will mention that things like Pro Bowl nods and stuff like that almost are like a year behind sometimes because Kirby's name is out there, so he's got to give the benefit of the doubt next year when the players vote and the coaches vote. Because that's another thing I don't really like about when we talked about the players and coaches vote. If you're someone in the AFC and you never saw Kirby play, you don't know. You're not like watching tape of players that you don't play against. Yes, they players and coaches should have a vote, but they're limited on what they're gonna see or what they have access to. So that's not the end all be all either of players and coaches voting either.
Right. Absolutely. Just because you had mentioned, I just want to look and see. And we've sent Kerby. Kirby's rushed 3 times this year. 3 snaps Kirby's rushed, and that's it.
Hmm. Yeah.
It just doesn't
Well,
happen very often.
no. And what was funny is that his one interception that he did return for a touchdown, the Packers was very close to the line. And I kind of was rushing and then stepped back and just got in the passing lane. So, he can play up close to the line of scrimmage. And that was obviously a game changing play. One thing that I'll say is that a lot of Kirby's interceptions, I looked at all of Xavier's and I've seen all of Kirby's. Kirby's there was a fair amount, especially at the beginning of season in the end zone, and those were game changing plays. I could the first game of the year when he stole one from Stafford. Um, that was right before the half. He picked that ball off. That was huge in that game. Obviously, returning one for a touchdown, huge in that game. Xavier's has not had any in the red zone as far as I could remember, and certainly none in the end zone. So I mean, Kirby's taken it off in key times.
Absolutely. Here's a question for you too. So,
Hmm.
he didn't make the Pro Bowl. We still think, I mean, he still should be at the front runner for All Pro. They're still talking about him being an All Pro, and he still is being thrown around as Defensive Player of the Year. Right now, the favorite for Defensive Player of the Year is Patrick Surtain from the Broncos, and the
Hmm.
second favorite right now is T.J. Watt. Do you think there's any possibility that Kerby wins it? And then while we're talking about it too, I mean, do you think that Patrick Surtain, uh, you know, obviously he's the favorite, but do you think that he's deserving of Defensive Player of the Year? And is it because of the fact that there has not been like a standout player? Is it because it's wide open? There's not but anybody breaking any records. Do you think that's why Kerby and Patrick Surtain are like in the conversation? TJ Watt is in the conversation because he's TJ Watt. He's not performing at the level that he has.
Hmm. That's the only reason he's there. Well, I think your answer is yes. The only reason that Kirby and Patrick Satan are even talked about is the league leader in sack right now is 14. We're not anywhere close to 20, and usually, it's just like in on the offensive side, it's going to go to a quarterback. And the only time that it wouldn't is if you weren't having quarterbacks just having more average seasons, and then you had a season like Saquon where he's, close to breaking the record or something like that. But this year we've had some awesome quarterbacks. So a quarterback's going to get it. And defensive line, it's who can rush the quarterback, who's going to affect gameplay that way. Usually a player with a sack. However, with them both being low, and um, that's why you have Patrick Surtain and Kerby in there. I don't think either one of them win. I'm biased because I want to say Kirby's going to do it, but I just don't. He won't have the votes to get there, especially with him not making the Pro Bowl. What about
Right.
you? Where
Well,
you
I
at
mean,
with all
it's definitely just a popularity contest. T.J. Watt's actually fourth in sacks right now. Trey Hendrickson leads the league in sacks, and Trey Hendrickson is nowhere to be found on there. Yep, and Mile, and then Daniel Hunter is close, falling up behind. But yeah, it is just one of those things. Historically, a defensive lineman, defensive end, defensive tackle. Aaron Donald obviously did it for a little bit, and linebacker. I actually went back to look just to see as far as defensive backs for defensive player of the year. Stephon Gilmore won in 2019 with the Patriots. And he had hardly any stats. Like there were no. That's the thing about cornerbacks, right? Is and Patrick Surtain this year, I think he's got like 4 interceptions. It's just the impact that he has on the game because they're not throwing to them.
that? Yep.
So, and that's also a perception thing. They're not throwing at him, so then the stats aren't there, the catches aren't there as much, and then. But
Well,
yeah, so that's when Gilmore won last. But the safety that won most recently was in 2010. It was Troy Polamalu.
Yeah.
Troy Polamalu that year had 63 tackles, 7 interceptions, and 1 sack. And he was the defensive player of the year.
He was all over
like I
the
said,
place, though.
right.
I mean,
No,
he
absolutely. But
affected
it's
the
a
play.
popularity thing.
It is.
It's
But
who
like you
has the
said,
most hype.
it is. But I would say with Troy, if you watched him play, is that he affected a lot of plays. Like even if he didn't make the tackle or whatever, he could affect the play. So I mean, it's really hard when you just look at those stats. I don't. Who votes for the player of the year? Is it media or is
It's
it? I don't
Associated
even.
Press, so I think that's the
Associated
media
Press.
thing.
Right. You have some media members that do their research and are journalists and see everything, and then you have other people that it's a popularity contest, or now it's a social media contest.
The thing
I don't
about
know.
Polamalu, which maybe this is a good thing for Kerby Joseph going forward too, is that Polamalu's best years were probably leading up to that. I mean, he was already established. He was, when you're talking about all over the field and everything, that's already the type of player that he was. And then
Mhm.
this particular year, when he won Defensive Player of the Year, it wasn't really anything, off the rails crazy. It was more so like there's nobody else. And then you've got Troy Polamalu. He's the name. He's still playing at a high level. It's, that's what I said before. It just comes down to a lot of it is just a popularity contest and less about what you put on the field.
Yeah, well, I think, that's what I said before about the Pro Bowl being like a year behind. It takes a little bit to get the benefit of the doubt. And so like, okay, he's having a Kerby Joseph year. So yeah, we're gonna put him in the Pro Bowl. He deserves it, whether it's his best year or not. So
Like Amon Ra, hopefully. I
yeah,
mean,
yes. I'm hoping that Kerby gets it. 9 interceptions. Just this past week, the one was a gift. That was a bad throw by Brock Purdy, but the second one, that was all Kerby, reading the eyes and doing his thing and anticipated. And that's what changed this year. He's able to do that. And that both those interceptions, if we don't get those, Lions don't win that game. I mean, bottom line, they don't win that game if they don't get both those interceptions.
yes. But I don't,
So,
I don't think they take that into consideration, the grand scheme of things, the level
oh
of.
no. No, I'm just saying for a
They just
Lions
look at the number.
standpoint. Yeah. No, I think for a
Obviously,
Lions
is a
standpoint
huge.
though, yeah,
Yeah.
it's gigantic. So, but anything else you want to add to the Kirby argument?
No, I think I rest my case.
Yeah, I know. I hope that he gets in. Well, hopefully he doesn't even have to play because we're preparing for the Super Bowl, right? But
Right.
I hope for All Pro he gets his nod. He deserves it. He's having an amazing year, and he's gonna regardless he's gonna earn a big contract. Hopefully it's with the Lions.
Right. Hey, he said before the season, he said, I want to lead the league in interceptions. And, when we hear that, we're like, awesome, which we already knew. Like, awesome. He's a hard worker. He's setting goals. He's got high hopes for the team. And then to see it, come to fruition and to see him actually leading the league in interceptions and still playing high, it's just awesome.
Yep, I agree. Yeah, when he said that, and I saw those in the book, I was like, "Oh, that'd be pretty cool if he could get like 4 or 5 or something like that." And I didn't think that he would lead the league. It's not that I don't think Kerby. It's hard to get interceptions, and some of them are luck. You can luck into some of that, but he's had his fair share of, he used his skill and got a vast majority of those interceptions where he read the play right.
Right.
All right, Jacob. I think we can take off.